Hey there, friends. I just wanted to take a few minutes to teach you how to do some things on Google Sheets because it's a lot easier to use Google Sheets to put information into a write-up or a project that you might be doing. So we're going to be taking a look at this data right here, and I'm going to just show you all the different tools that you're going to need for using Google Sheets to find it. So the first thing I want to do is, you're going to have this data in your sheet, and I can just type in mean. Hopefully that you've used some form of sheets at some point. If you're totally new to this, we'll talk about that, and I'll make another video. But we're going to do the mean and the standard deviation, okay? So Google Sheets, in order to use a function, you can just hit the equal sign. And here's some ones that I've done. You could just add them all up or calculate the average. So we're going to do the average, and it will even highlight what it thinks you should do. Or you can select and highlight what you want it to do. So it calculated the average of B3 to B22, which is exactly what I wanted. Okay. And now I want to calculate the standard deviation. So I'm going to put the equals. I'm going to start typing in standard deviation. And I see here standard deviation right here, standard deviation S. And that's the one that I'm going to use. And again, I'm going to highlight the information that I want to take the standard deviation of, and then close the parenthesis and hit enter. So now I've calculated the standard deviation, and I think I forgot to tell you what the data is about. So this is where we measured a bunch of people's waistline in inches and their percent body fat to see if there's a correlation between waist size and body fat. So the average waist size here, the mean is 37.05, and then the standard deviation is 3.18. So let's do that one more time. So we're going to just do equals, and we're going to do average, and it happens to be right there. So, and it does a lot of the work for you because it's thinking, oh, this is based on something you've just did. So I'm going to do average of C3 to C22, and then I'm going to hit enter. So that's going to give me the average percent body fat. And now I'm going to do standard deviation. Now let me show you another little trick with Google Sheets. If you want to copy something, you can just grab that corner there, and see how I got the crosshairs? And if I just move that over, voila, it's going to not only carry the formula, but it's going to carry the formula to the next column. So notice here that it's the standard deviation of the C column, and this is the standard deviation of the B column. So it's kind of a nice little tool so you don't have to keep copying and pasting. Okay? And then the last thing I want to show you for calculating functions is the correlation coefficient. So if you type in you got to do the equal sign first. Well, let's just type in correlation to know that that's what we're going to put in this next cell over here. So remember, whenever you're doing a function, you need to put the equal sign in first. So there goes the equal sign. And we're going to do COR. We're going to type in coral, and it's Corel. So it's correlation coefficient. And what you need to do is you need to give all the X values. So we're going to highlight all these X values. Sorry, we're going to start there and scroll down. And then you're going to put a comma in, and you're going to highlight all the Y values. And then close your parentheses. So notice here, it's the correlation of everything in this column and then everything in this column. So we want to know what the correlation coefficient is between those two values. And then we just hit enter. So that's showing us that we have a positive correlation of 0.886 between waistline and body fat. Okay. And remember, with correlation, it doesn't matter if I had selected body fat first or waist first, you're going to get the same value. So that's a pretty strong correlation coefficient of 0.88. Okay. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to do. So you want to pause this video and practice doing that on your own. See if you can do that. All right. And this is going to be shared in the Google Classroom. So you can use this data or you can use some other data and just practice that. So give it a pause and practice that. Okay, now that we've practiced that, now I'm going to look at how we can actually calculate. Remember, we sort of breezed over this in class, but I want to show you now how you can actually use this to calculate your regression analysis, your least squares regression equation using just x bar, y bar, and r. So remember from the formula, B naught is going to be equal to your r value times your standard deviation of y divided by your standard deviation of x. And that's kind of like the slope, right? Beta naught is the slope, and standard deviation of y over standard deviation of x is change in y over change in x times the strength of the correlation coefficient. So I just wrote that as a statement so that we know the calculation that we're going to do. So beta naught here is going to be equal, we're going to actually create the equation. So my r value is over here, so I did my equal sign. So I'm just going to click on that value, and then I'm going to multiply it by the standard deviation of y. And in this case, my the y value is the body fat, because we're seeing if waist can predict body fat. So that's my standard deviation of y, and I'm going to divide that by my standard deviation of x and hit enter. So what this is saying is that my slope is 2.22. And remember, in context, that means for every increase in waist by 1 inch, my body fat is going to increase by 2.2 percentage points. So that's the formula for the slope. And then remember, the y-intercept is what we call B1, and that's going to be, look at my cheat sheet over here, is your y bar, and I can't really do y bar on here, but I'm just going to write y bar minus the B1 times x bar. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to calculate that over here. So there's my little cheat sheet. So I want to calculate B1. So I'm going to put my equal sign in there. And y bar is over here. So there's y bar. And I'm going to subtract B1, which is right above here, and multiply that times x bar, which is right there. And hit enter. So there is my calculation, and it shows you up here in what you did, C23. So here's C23, there's that bar, that's y bar, minus E25, which is my beta naught, my slope, times my x bar, and that's how I calculate that. So it's saying, and I hit enter. So there we go. So that's the negative 62. Okay, so if I were to actually write out my least squares regression equation, I would say that y is equal to 2.22 minus 62x. So that should be y hat equals 2.22 minus 62x. All right, so that's how I would do it by hand. Now let's show you how Google Sheets. So why don't you give that a pause the video and see if you can actually do those calculations. All right. All right, hopefully you had some success with that. And now let me show you how you actually can put in the scatter plot, and also how Google Sheets will calculate all this for you. All right, so now that you've suffered through that, now we'll show you how Google Sheets will do it. So you want to do, you want to put a chart in here. So you're going to do insert chart, okay? And there's no data. So let's delete that. And let's actually highlight the data that we want to create the chart with. So that's the data that we want to create the chart with. And we're going to do insert chart. And Google actually figures out what kind of chart you want. But if for some reason it doesn't put in the chart that you want, what you can do is go over here to chart setup, and it has all these different charts. Now, it actually put in the chart we wanted, which was a scatter plot. But if you wanted something else, you could have put that in as well. And it also assumed what the that the x values were waist and that the y values are body. But if you want to change the title, you can go ahead and go to customize, and we can start changing things. So if I want to change the chart title to, let's change the chart title to just waist versus percent body fat. Okay, let's say and let's make sure we spell that right. Okay, so we can change the title there. And there's all sorts of other things we can change. So you can explore that on your own a little bit. So there's your chart. All right, so can you go ahead and try to do that? And then when you're done, you can come back to the video. All right, hopefully that you got that chart. And now I also want to show you how you can edit the chart from here. So here, if you want to edit chart, you can just click edit chart. And what I want to do now is put in a trend line. So I'm going to go back to my customize, and this is in an odd place. It's in what we call series. So we're going to go here and we're going to say trend line, and it just pops it right in there. And there's the trend line. That's actually the least squares regression line. And what you want to do here is show r squared. And you also want to use the equation, and then they'll tell you the equation. And check it out. So there's our equation. Y hat is equal to 2.22x. And look at, that's what we calculated as beta naught minus 62.6. And it's not showing the x all the way because it's, why isn't it showing that? Oh, 2.22x, because that's the slope. And there's my y-intercept is the negative 62.6. And there's my r squared. And actually, we calculated our correlation. And if we were to go over here and say we want to calculate r squared, we could just take this value and we could say equals this squared. And there we go. There's our value, 0.787. So that's what we calculated over here was our correlation coefficient. So you don't actually have to do all this. The Google Sheets will do it for you, but I just wanted to show you how it did it all. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video, rewind to show you how to do that. And remember, you just go here, you can go to edit chart and then go down to customize, and putting the trend line is under series, scroll down, click trend line, click use equation and r squared. All right, so practice doing this on your own, and we will see you soon.